Digital Marketing Radio, episode 269. What is the role of community in B2B marketing?
Digital Marketing Radio with David Bain.
Hi, I'm David Bain, and this is Digital Marketing Radio, the place where today's modern marketing masters mingle, keeping you up to date with all the latest tools, tactics, and trends of all the essential matters in digital marketing today. The world of social media has exploded over the last 15 years. Consumers now have the ability to share their experiences about any kind of purchase imaginable. But what about B2B? We're constantly told that B2B marketing is very different from B2C, and that building a community in the world of B2B is a lot tougher. But is that really the case? And what is the role of community in B2B marketing today? Joining me to discuss that in episode 269 of Digital Marketing Radio is a man who's been wholly focused in the world of B2B marketing for the last 17 years. He's the Editor-in-chief of B2B Marketing. Welcome to DMR, Joe Harrison.
Well, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you can find Joe over at b2bmarketing.net. So thanks so much for coming on, Joe. So Joe, how does B2B marketing differ from B2C marketing?
Well, I was once told about the 4 knots of B2B by an agency that created this as a kind of little meme, and I can only ever remember 3 of them. So I'll try and give you those 3. It's not today, it's not my money, and it's not just my decision. B2B decision-making is long-term. There's multiple decision makers in it, not just a couple. And it's not the individual's money that they're spending. They're spending the money of the organization. So that's very different from consumer, which often is quite emotional. Well, B2B is emotionally led, but in a different way. But it's not impulsive or instinctive. It's very considered and has to be. And there's all kinds of complexities in the decision-making unit and individuals. And there's a whole school of thought around called behavioral economics. If you ever heard Rory Sutherland speak, he's excellent about this. So yeah, it is very, very different. And people who say, oh, it's just marketing, it's all the same. I mean, generally speaking, it's because they don't really know anything about B2B.
Yes, I've certainly heard Rory Sutherland, seen him on a few webinars. Haven't seen him in person, but shout out to the Marketing Meetup. You know, he's done really well, a few great webinars on there. So does that mean that B2B perhaps hasn't had to change as much with the times in terms of digital marketing? Has it been more challenging or not even possible for B2B to really change as much technology-wise as B2C might have done over the last few years?
I'm going to challenge you back and say that I kind of don't think there's any such thing as digital marketing, because all marketing is digital. I mean, if you're doing analog marketing, where are you? What are you doing? I mean, it doesn't exist. It can't exist. There are analog activities to marketing, but the vast overwhelming majority of B2B marketing certainly is digital. And I think if you consider, has it changed as much as consumer? It's changed in a different way. It hasn't changed as fast, or at least it hadn't changed as fast about 10 years ago, but it's definitely picked up pace. And if you think about what I was talking about just now in terms of decision-making units, there was a wonderful phrase coined and used the word modern marketing. That's an expression coined by John Miller, who founded Marketo and now went on to found part of what's now Demandbase. And he coined the phrase modern marketing. And it's used to talk about that came out of the marketing automation revolution. And another one of those guys in that process was Steve Woods, and he talked about digital body language. And it was all about understanding how individuals, and now increasingly how accounts, how they function, and all of the different touch points that they have with an organization, with its sales team, with its marketing team, with its channel partners, sometimes with its website, with its social feeds, in order to move towards making a decision. And so it's incredibly complex. It's incredibly digital. And the complexity renders it, whilst some of the consumer activity, I suspect, is probably more up to the minute and possibly, I dare say, flashier. I mean, I don't want that to sound like a derogatory term, but I guess it can be. B2B, that the online digital interactions have to be really meaningful to convince people to part with sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds.
I guess I was thinking of things like appearing in trade publications. But is this something that doesn't really exist anymore? I mean, people in B2B, will they generally not get a physical trade magazine anymore? Is most of that online as well?
Yeah, I mean, increasingly, you wanted to talk to me today. What the things we're going to explore later on is around communities. We are actually an interesting case in point. last year we closed our magazine. We stopped printing our magazine. Now we launched it 17 years ago, and that was all we wanted to be. And we expanded to different things. And it probably lasted beyond its sell-by date, partly because we didn't know what the go-to thing was. And communities are filling that gap. And if you actually look around if you look at the big B2B trade publishers, the people like EMAP, and Informa and people like that, and the various companies in that Reed, RBI, in those kind of areas, they've either divested themselves of what's left of their trade publishing, marketing with Centaur or ZM, no one knows how to pronounce it, is another example of that. They divested themselves of that, or they've mutated them into either community platforms or data platforms, or sometimes both. So, yes, there are print products around, and as someone whose heartland is in producing magazines, I still think print plays a valuable role, but it's not embedded into people's work streams in the way that digital is.
So why do you think it took you until last year to move over to more of a community focus from a physical copy magazine? Is that because building communities for B2B is tougher, or takes longer, or isn't as effective as B2C?
I think it's a combination of things. One is it's like I said earlier on, we had a magazine. And the magazine is a center of what we do. Just to clarify for listeners, B2B marketing is a kind of, multimedia kind of portfolio of products, content. We have our own podcast, loads and loads of webinars that we do, loads of content we create, loads of events, and awards are a really big part of that. But the center of that was a magazine. And so, if it was a case of until you had something to replace the magazine, it was hard to know to back away from that. I think we didn't actually, and this was something that came from the pandemic. We were looking at beginning of 2020, looking down the barrel of a gun, because as lots of companies and businesses were going, we make a lot of our revenue from events. We know that we may be able to run the events online, but we probably won't be able to get the delegate revenue. And, this looks quite scary. And one of the things it did give us the opportunity to do is we had a membership activity for CMOs and marketing directors. And we knew that there was more that could be. It wasn't enough. And we knew we could package it up together and deliver more stuff together within it. And we actually, allocated some time to doing that. And we didn't say we want to launch a community, but that's kind of what came out the other end of that process. Actually what we realized is that this was something which was gathering momentum, gathering pace. There was an understanding that, of what community looks like in a B2B context, which is different to what it looks like in a consumer context. And by the way, I don't think that we've completely got that yet. I think every day that goes past, I think I learn more about what it should be and what it could be. And we embarked on that journey, and we launched in January. It's called Propolis, which means first city. It's the word. And by the way, David, if you haven't heard this word, I had never heard it before we started.
I haven't done it. I was just about to Google it.
So it literally means first city, but also it's a term that bees is the word for what the resin that bees create and make to build their hives. So obviously it's the foundational block for a bee community. Bees, B2B, the pretty obvious kind of synergies there. Bees are community led, they're industrious, they work together. So, it felt very, very simple and strong. And, it's the right time. And I mean, I feel like, without wishing to extend this answer, which I appreciate is frustrating when you're interviewing someone, what we're learning around what B2B marketers want, is different in terms of who they are. The CMOs and the senior marketers want connectivity, peer-to-peer, collaboration, sharing, validation, all that kind of stuff. The marketing managers want quick wins, quick fixes to sort out the everyday challenges they have. So we have to cater for both those levels, and probably lots of grey areas in between. And that's what we're doing.
So what research did you do when you decided that you were going to launch a community? And how did that research change, impact what you actually decided to include in the community?
Well, we interviewed a lot of our best customers and asked them what they liked from us and what they didn't like. And we looked around into the market in terms of what solutions are available as well. Actually, ironically, we believed naively that a lot of what we could deliver in an analog fashion. We weren't necessarily looking for a digital community hub. We kind of strung the bits together and thought we could deliver this in a kind of a largely offline way, at the risk of counteracting what I said earlier on or contradicting what I said earlier on. But then it became obvious that actually the digital community platform is the piece that strings these things together and makes them more powerful and takes on its life of its own as well.
So what are the typical long-term objectives of having a B2B community? Is it with a view to turning prospects into customers and brand evangelists, or is it simply, turn it additional revenue model or alternative business to what business is typically doing?
Are you talking now from a position of a publisher or an information provider like ourselves, or are you talking about position from the customer's perspective, or both?
I think I'm looking at it from the two different perspectives. One is from your own experience. What are your own reasons behind doing it? Or do you actually want to build that into a revenue generating model by yourself, or is it a way to simply market other things that you do? And then secondly, from a general B2B brand's perspective that hasn't got a community yet but is thinking of having a community, what's the value in having it for them? Is it a marketing channel, or is it an opportunity to add an additional revenue stream?
Okay, all right. So thank you for clarifying. Sorry for that. From our perspective, the value for us is that it allows you to cultivate and build deeper, longer-term relationships with our best customers, the type of customers which we know buy lots of stuff from us, and do it in a holistic way. Instead of trying to sell lots of little bits and pieces to them throughout the year, subscriptions, event tickets, awards entries, training, and the advisory consultancy on top, we can package it up in one piece. And by the way, we can tease out better opportunities by having a collected relationship with them, and instead of having just a member at a CMO level, we can have a membership at heads of function level and a marketing manager level, and even at an exec level. So we can cater for all their needs by packaging things up into a solution. Now, I don't know if that and is it paid for? Yes, it is paid for. It's not. We're not going to say it's not free. We have to do a lot of work to populate it and make it work, and a lot of people contribute to it, so it has to be paid for. And I don't know enough about other organizations in terms of B2B publishers, or what you would have called publishers 5-10 years ago. But I know that people like Chemical Watch, for example, are ahead of us on this journey. And there's different iterations of that same journey people are going on for that very reason, because they want to get close to their customers and deliver what they want, and just pumping out print magazines, back to your point earlier on, it's very 1995. So it's not where we want to be right now. And then in terms of your other question was around the role of it for brands. What should brands consider should they consider having their own communities? And I don't think they necessarily need to. I think for me, this is where intermediaries come in. This is where people like ourselves, it's about the intermediary for 2022 rather than for 1995 or 2005. What does that look like? And, there are, we are working with commercial partners, or starting to work with commercial partners within the platform. It's early days for those yet, but we know there's opportunities for that. And that has huge benefits for them. I don't think every brand needs to, or actually, it would actually be damaging for every brand to try and set up their own community. Some do definitely have the opportunity to do it, but it's more about how you leverage other existing communities and work with the owners and managers of those communities in order to position yourself and your activities best within those activities. Because a community can be anything, can be based around anything. And talking about a lot of events are trying to position themselves as communities. And obviously B2B brands work with events, but it's moving beyond that kind of one-off transactional moment where you turn up, build a big stand, I hope to speak to people for 3 days and then go off again. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts on a B2B community, a digital B2B community, as an opportunity to network? Because in the past, I've gone to various different business networking events, not so much recently, but I remember going to loads of breakfast meetings with a view to actually just do is it speed business dating or whatever it's called, have 2-minute conversations with different people, and maybe do mini presentations of what I do as well. And there's an opportunity to perhaps do business directly with other attendees. On the face of it, that seems more challenging and less personable to do that in a digital manner. Is that still possible to do that digitally?
I think it is possible, but you've got to manage those relationships well. It's just not the same. And I think it's easy to make some assumptions, even having some experience of these things, that they'll work in one way and where they won't. I think my job as a community leader is to cultivate those, reciprocal relationships and get people to understand the value that they offer to each other. And that does involve some offline activities as well, or at least stuff like Zoom, for example. We do a lot of roundtables and meetings where you can understand experts and you can find out people who've shared similar problems to you, and then cultivate opportunities for them to come together. And we are doing an event for our CMO audience next week, a physical event. Ironically, we did an event last week, a conference about account-based marketing. That's actually, we wouldn't normally do so many physical events in 1 month. It's just an accident of circumstances that's happened. But there's definitely a role for that analog activity as the icing on the cake, but backed up, underpinned by the digital stuff, which allows immediacy and accuracy and pragmatism and flexibility around who you talk to and when.
Because of COVID, do you believe that we're going to see much less face-to-face interaction in the future? Or are we going to see a combination between digital and physical meetings still?
Well, if you think about events, if you look at the perspective of events, I think the future is definitely hybrid. We're not going to go back to the old days of all physical events, physical leading being the only thing. But I think people are zoomed out, frankly. Even the MD of Zoom said he zoomed out, didn't he? And frankly, also, what was successful in May 2020 is not what's successful now. There was frankly a lot of rubbish that was going on then, and the bar's been raised significantly. So to get back to something, to everyone, to the kind of standard of raise of what good digital events looks like, and we need to move with it. I mean, our conference last week, we had, it was a physical conference, but it was streamed. So, we sold tickets. Last year, our events were mostly free. We did sell some tickets as well. But going forward, they'll only be paid for. And we actually, our learning from last week is we've been offering digital tickets at a reduced rate. We won't be doing that anymore. Because all the work is the same, and actually the costs are higher as well. So you can attend in person if you like, but you can also attend digitally, and you can watch stuff on demand, which is great when you've got different streams of activity going on. I appreciate you weren't necessarily talking about events, but that's quite high on my agenda.
No, that's great. That's a relevant conversation, a related conversation. Do you not have more fixed costs when people are attending physically, and is it not putting people off who are just going to attend digitally to pay the same as someone attending in person?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I think you want to try and encourage people to, economics is about incentives and disincentives, and you want to give people, tell them all the value that they're getting by coming, we will continue to watch it, but we're definitely, at the very least, there won't be even if they don't end up being the same price in the future, there will be vastly less difference. So, and it might even be that we put up the physical cost of events so they become more balanced that way. I don't know, but I think you have to encourage people monetarily to come and to show them all the things they're missing out on for the very reasons you're speaking about, that the power of those interactions and the power of the things that when you're seeing them face to face and the people you meet face to face is tremendous, and is worth taking time out for.
It's certainly challenging, and people are learning, as you say, and it's a new type of event. It's not something that existed 5 years ago. So I think businesses are learning and changing their offering because of that. I think another challenge that these type of hybrid events have is to encourage as much interaction as possible from people who are actually viewing digitally. Did you attempt to encourage interaction from people attending digitally, and actually do things like even maybe read out their names or involve them somehow as part of the physical event as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, you mean when the events were digital only, or the one we did that was hybrid?
Yeah. So the event that you've just done. So for people that were just attending virtually, did you do something to actually try to incorporate them as part of the physical event and make them feel that they really were part of the real thing as well?
We did try, but to be honest, we could have tried harder. And I think it's one of those problems that you've got some integrating. It was one of those things we didn't think about early enough. We had people cultivating the digital stream. We tried to get questions in. We got some questions in, but it's just a difficult process to manage. I don't think the platform we were using we didn't use the right connection of tools to do that. It's definitely I think we need something to work harder at. But the feedback we got has been generally pretty good. They're generally very good, rather than pretty good. And they seem to have enjoyed it. And I think that the buzz from the live event translates into the digital one. They see that people are enjoying it. They appreciate it. The highlight for me was when we had a couple, two speakers from Autodesk, and there was someone from Germany who was presenting virtually, and someone from the UK was presenting physically, and then we had people in the room watching, and the people online watching as well. So that was like meta hybrid, I think you could call it. It was it took a different level. So that went well, and everyone enjoyed that and went down well. So that gives me confidence.
Great, well done. That's a good combination. I remember about 5 years ago or so, I was live streaming the Brighton SEO event, and I was hosting an in-between speakers discussion panel on what had actually been discussed. And then that was being live streamed, but one or two members of the discussion panel were joining virtually as well. So that was a whole strange mixture of things. But it was very appealing to the target audience, and it's something that certainly feels that makes people feel that they're being involved because they see people virtually taking part as well. I don't think anyone, as you say, has got it completely right yet, but it's important to try these things.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's move on to the second section of our discussion. So it's now time for Joel's thoughts on the state of digital marketing today. So starting off with
secret software.
So Joel, can you share a lesser known MarTech tool that's bringing you a lot of value at the moment and why that tool is important for you?
We just deployed Swoogo as our delegate management platform for running our events, and everyone seems to be loving it. It's great. We're using another tool. I'm not going to mention the name of something. I'm not going to be less than positive about it. I think it'd be unfair. But was it one that was more orientated around physical events, and it didn't really work in the new capacity. So Swoogo, is so far very impressive.
So Swoogo, I was just trying to spell that. It is SWOOGO, isn't it?
SWOOGO.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that's what I meant. That's what I read in Google anyway. Wonderful stuff. Okay, let's move on to
next on the list.
So what's one marketing activity or tool that you haven't tried yet, but you want to test soon?
Well, back to your point earlier on, I think I really want to explore more of the digital networking technologies. The event platform that we used for used over the last 18 months is really good at broadcast stuff, but it is changing all the time. The amount of money going into these platforms is extraordinary, but it's a bit weak on the networking side of things. So there are some platforms that have better functionality built in, and there are some platforms that actually just do that by itself. And I think I'd like to explore some of those things. I know there are a few things that operate in that area.
Great stuff. Yeah, I think I've received an invitation recently for a bit of software called Lunch Club, and it seems to be encourage actually physical meetings of people, but I haven't given it a proper go, but could be a bit of interesting software to try. Let's move on to the next section. So that's called
the this or that round.
So this is the quick response round. Just 10 quick questions here, 2 rows. Try not to think about the answer too much, and you're only allowed to say the word both on one occasion, so use it wisely. Are you ready?
Okay.
TikTok or Twitter?
Twitter.
Facebook or LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
YouTube or podcast?
Podcast.
Traffic or leads?
Leads.
Paid search or SEO?
SEO.
Ads or influencers?
Ads.
Google ads or Facebook ads?
Google ads.
Email marketing or chat marketing?
Email marketing.
MarTech stack or all-in-one platform?
MarTech stack.
One-to-one or scale?
One-to-one.
Well, you're definitely not into Facebook, and You probably ummed a little bit on traffic or leads. I can understand why you said leads, but why were you potentially thinking traffic?
Oh, I heard a fascinating presentation at the end of our ABM conference last week about somebody from a Latini Conant, I think her name. She's an American CMO at a company called Sixth Sense, and she wrote a book about the transformation they went through. And she said we just basically broke the gates down. We got rid of all our gates, and because we want, and I'm not going to pretend to try and explain the rationale, but she just believed that the right content gets to the right people, and it turns into inbound, or it turns into the right opportunities, and I like the idea of that. And the other side of it is, I think if you've been working in B2B for any length of time, there's a tyranny around leads, and marketing automation was designed to improve that relationship, but actually, often it only exacerbated it. And you had the conversation about what is a marketing qualified lead and what's a sales accepted lead, and just stuff getting chucked backwards and forwards. So it created a better construct for a battlefield rather than resolving the battle. Whereas account-based marketing at the one-to-one end, which is why I was saying that does resolve that issue, but it's not right for everybody.
So do you think if I asked you that question in 5 years' time, you would say traffic over leads?
I hope so. I can't guarantee it. I mean, I think there is, it's back to your point. I'm mindful listening back to my own responses that they definitely weren't at the most bleeding edge end of kind of MarTech or digital marketing, even if such thing exists or not. But seeing as I'm on digital marketing radio, I probably should say it does exist. Otherwise otherwise it would get all existential and I wouldn't even be here. I hope so. But I think in B2B, kind of old habits die hard.
Well, let's move on to
the $10,000 question.
If I were to give you $10,000 and you had to spend it over the next few days on a single thing to grow your business, what would you spend it on and how would you measure success?
I think I'd spend it on just an experienced, some more resource in our business. I mean, we've gone through a tremendous period of transition and change, not helped by the fact we moved offices a couple of days ago as well. So much stuff, exciting stuff going on. We never have enough people to throw at stuff. And right now I could just do with some help in terms of getting marketing out the door and getting content out the door. And obviously, as we all know, those things are very aligned. So I'm sorry, that's quite a crude answer, but that would be, if you sent me someone experienced who can just churn through stuff for 3 months, that would make my life a lot easier.
So when you say get content out the door, what type of content ideally would that be to appeal to your target market? Well,
I mean, all and any kind of content. I think it's we have so much that we'd like to be doing. So many things. It's less is more. But also, for me on a personal level, I'm struggling to triage my own time, things that I'd like to be doing and things that I'm not able to be doing. So everything from webinars to podcasts to features, you name it. We could. I've got a great team and some really new people who are doing tremendously well. And but there's always there's so much. We're at an exciting point in our business, and we just need we did as much. If you gave me someone great for 3 months, I could make very good use of them.
I mean, I think it's content's obviously essential in this modern world. For a client, actually, at the moment, I'm producing a book, and in order to produce the book, I'm interviewing over 60 different marketing experts and producing that as a video series and a podcast and a book, and publish it all in the same day. Do you think that it's possible to produce content for multiple mediums like that all at the same time? Or do you think ideally you should just focus on one medium at a time?
Well, I'm going to say yes to both of those, because I think it is possible, but it is ideal that you do it one at a time. But I'm sure you know that, or you believe that already. You can repurpose stuff. You should seek to repurpose stuff, but sometimes there's complexity in repurposing, which can drive you slightly out of your mind.
Okay, let's move on to
Magical marketer.
So who's an up-and-coming marketer that you'd like to give a shout out to? What can we learn from them, and where can we find them?
Well, I think, coming off the back of our conference last week on account-based marketing, I cited Neil Berry from Atos, who is the head of ABM, account-based marketing there, who gave a tremendous session at our conference around his experience of plotting out Atos's account-based marketing strategy and all of the lessons he's learned along the way with that. Neil's a great guy. He's got a really disarming, self-effacing manner to him, but he's achieved an awful lot in his career. He's kind of come through the Fujitsu school of account-based marketing and learned a lot from Andrea Clatworthy, for example, who is the guru in that kind of area. He's doing brilliantly, and his session at our conference just really resonated with people in terms of the honesty and the candor with which he spoke about the challenges, but also he's been very successful in there as well. So yeah, he's definitely someone worth following if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Wonderful. I would like to point out it's not the jiu-jitsu school of account-based marketing. It is the Fujitsu one. Yeah. Slight difference.
Yes.
You obviously said the right one.
Sometimes it could be the jiu-jitsu school, but I don't know. I haven't met Andrea on a dark night, so maybe who knows?
Absolutely superb. Well, Joe, thanks so much for joining us today. Obviously, listener can find you through b2bmarketing.net. Is there an ideal social platform that you'd like to interact on that people can follow you on?
Yeah, LinkedIn or Twitter are both really good. I'm not really very much of anywhere else, but I'm certainly not in a work capacity on Facebook. So yeah, I'd love to interact with people on either of those things. So thank you so much, David. It's been lovely speaking to you. Some really interesting questions, thought-provoking ones as well. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Joe. So obviously we talked a little bit about B2B marketing in general. If you're going to set up a community, ask your market about it before you set up a community. I think a lot of marketers make that mistake. They launch something and then ask for feedback. That was so important what you said to begin with.
And I would just add to that. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's something you've really got to buy. Really got to be committed to. You can't, the thing about social presence. You can't just set up a social media presence and then leave it alone. With its community, it's quite the opposite. It takes a lot of money and investment and time to do it. And if you're not really, really super committed to it, just don't bother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the same goes with all the different social platforms. Don't be on everything and give links to everything and then not interact on there. That's actually negative publicity instead of good publicity. We could have another conversation about that, I'm sure. We had a great conversation about hybrid events, of course, as well. And you could have a lot of great thoughts, personal experience from doing that. It's definitely the future. It's how it's done. You've got to involve everyone, and it's challenging to do that. Your secret software, swoogo.com. Your next on the list, digital networking technologies, and your magical marketer, Neil Berry from Atos. I'll make sure that there are links to all of that in the show notes at digitalmarketingradio.com. Anyway, thanks again for coming on. Great to have you as part of the show.
It's wonderful to be here, David. Thank you so much for the invitation.
digitalmarketingradio.com. digitalmarketingradio.com. Digital Marketing Radio, Digital Marketing Radio, digitalmarketingradio.com.